Run us through the ramifications of President Trump's decision to suspend aid on Africa, on South Africa, and specifically the price action that we saw yesterday across these financial assets.
Right, Jumana, it's really interesting when you zero in on the price action, because if we flash back to a week ago, when we did first get a little bit of direction, or at least verbal targeting from the president of the U.S. to South Africa, we saw the rand plunge almost 2%, and we saw a lot of the discussion around mining in Indaba, which is where I was at, focusing in on the future of bilateral relations between South Africa and the U.S. And as you mentioned, when we got this news on Monday, yesterday, a bit more muted, where I was just looking at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange closed almost to a record high. We saw a muted response from the rand and also bonds. And when we talk to a lot of business leaders here in the country, the focus still is on the fundamentals of this economy and some of the improvements that we heard just about a week ago from President Ramaphosa of South Africa. But still, there is concern about what the future of this relationship looks like. You mentioned PEPFAR there. We have heard President Trump really targeting or being directional, I guess, when it comes to his frustration at this new expropriation law in South Africa. There's also his concerns around South Africa taking Israel to the ICJ. So the concern from business leaders is that potentially this ramps up and this escalates. But still, this is an important relationship for both countries. We should say South Africa is the U.S.'s biggest, most important trading partner on the African continent, biggest trading partner when we look there. And when we look to the U.S., it's very important for South Africa, second biggest trading partner, second to China. So it is important, but a lot of this relationship in the past has been focused on aid. You mentioned PEPFAR there. And so really the focus is going to be on what does this look like going forward, and how do we cool the temperature, as some people told us.
Yeah, Jenna, it's going to be interesting to see how this is going to translate into people's perception of the economy, because the theme for the last couple of months, as we've spoken about a lot on this show, is sentiment is turning more positive about the South African economy. There's reduced load shedding, which obviously has been a massive headwind to the economy, but that headwind seems to be somewhat of a less of an issue. You talk about the prospects for central bank easing and what that means also for growth. How do you think the actions by the U.S. administration are going to impact investors' sentiment towards the South African economy?
Well, you know, in my discussions with many people over the past few days, they have said that this current spat that we're seeing is a bit, one person described it as manufactured, right? Because the way that President Trump is describing his opposition to this law here is not exactly what it is. And so many people are saying that hopefully investors will see that at the base of this, these are two countries that do need each other. When you look at trade, when you look at aid, you mentioned PEPFAR there. And so hopefully they will be able to move past this. Not only that, South Africa is hosting the G20, the first African nation to host the G20. The expectation is that the U.S. was going to be here. We heard last week that Secretary of State Marco Rubio said he does not plan to come later this week when we do have the foreign ministers meeting. President Trump is expected to come later this year. But again, it is a very important relationship for both sides, both countries. And so investors are really focused then on the fundamentals here, right? If we are seeing an improved economy, if we are seeing energy and other, other parts of this economy improving, is there really a disagreement here? And do these two countries potentially will just move past a lot of the disputes that they have now and focus in on what's actually important for both sides? But we'll have to see. It'll be very interesting.